Hey, I'm Jason Cohen with Big Change the Film. I decided to do something a little different this week, give a little bit of an intro for the guest, and also have a small announcement. This week's guest is Teresa Cassle, who's lost 70 pounds. She's got a great story, overcame fatty liver disease, diabetes, amongst a host of other issues, went from not being able to really walk to now she can climb. She's had problems with her eyesight, just has an amazing story. The announcement that I have is that we made some t-shirts for Big Change the Film, and I made them specifically to have at Leadville for a bunch of people that ran the race a couple weeks ago, but also wanted to sell them to kind of help out with production costs and also just to have a talking piece for people. So these are the shirts. It says impossible upside down, and then possible, just kind of turning what was previously impossible on its head into new possibilities. And then on the back it just says Big Change the Film. They're $25. If you'd like to order one, just go ahead and go to the website, bigchangethefilm.com. Just make a donation of $25, include your mailing address, and I can get that in the mail to you. They are unisex. I have sizes small to double XL, maybe a few triple XL left, and probably in the future we'll do some other colors. For right now, green is the only color available, but if you're interested, would love to get a shirt out to you. I hope you enjoy the interview this week, and as always, thanks so much for watching. I'm here with Teresa Cassle. We got connected through Tim Kaufman, and she's got a great story. So first off, Teresa, thanks for the time, and maybe we could just start off with a brief introduction about yourself and where you're from.
Sure. Thanks for having me. We finally managed to get together here. We're both so busy. I'm from Charleston, West Virginia. I'm 50 years old. I'm been doing the plant-based thing for about 5 years, and I'm a outdoorsy kind of person, so that's how I spend most of my time when I'm not working. I work as an accountant and for a giant truck stop company. So that's pretty much me in a nutshell.
I know you mentioned to me that you developed a whole host of diseases, physical problems, illness, kind of later in life. But growing up, were you a fairly healthy kid?
Yeah, I was actually a really healthy kid. When I was born, my parents were 43 and 54. So I had asthma from a young age and a few little health quirks that may have been related to some of that. But was born with a dislocated hip, and my mom put me in ballet when I was 4. And I was one of those kids that broke every bone and climbed every tree and fell out of it, and that kind of kid. And never had any weight issues. In fact, I had trouble gaining weight. My nickname in elementary school was Toothpick, if that tells you anything. Had a very active childhood, and same with my teenage years and my early 20s. Didn't start to gain weight or have health issues until I was about 28.
Wow.
That's when problems started.
Yeah, I think so. You mentioned to me in a message that you developed Hashimoto's thyroid disease at 28. Yes. Was that kind of the first thing that happened? Was that the first domino?
Well, I wonder. I helped to take care of my dad, who had Alzheimer's for 11 years. And I think that a lot of the illnesses that I went through and my mother went through were stress related. I can't really prove that, but it had a horrible effect on both of us. Emotionally, it's very difficult to be a caretaker. And I was trying to go to school and work. I worked waiting tables, and I had a horrible diet. Anybody that, in your 20s and you wait tables, you drink beer and eat chicken wings, junk. But developed some really cruddy habits then. We didn't grow up eating that way. We had vegetables. My mom and dad always had a big garden and canned food and, made everything from scratch. Of course, we had biscuits and gravy and the typical, hillbilly food, but we had a pretty healthy lifestyle compared to most people. We didn't eat junk food. We didn't go out to eat very often. I think my health problems just sort of tanked at that time period. And the first thing that happened, I was diagnosed with the thyroid problem after I had my gallbladder taken out. Actually, the surgeon that took my gallbladder out in an office visit noticed that I had a goiter in my throat when I sat up on the examination table. And I had all these digestive issues, and I had those for a while. But it got really bad and I was in pain all the time for maybe 5 or 6 years, and went to various doctors trying to figure out why I was in pain. I had abdominal pain and lower back pain. And when we finally figured out it was my gallbladder, um, that explained a lot of the problems that I had. So I had my gallbladder removed, and that was pretty painless, but I had 57 and counting gallstones, which was a lot. And I also had, I guess it was so enlarged that it was stuck to my aorta and my liver and, other things. So a very routine surgery was a little more difficult than it should have been. So um, then I was diagnosed with the thyroid problems after that. But then the gallbladder eventually being removed caused all sorts of other issues too. That's a big laundry list of problems that came from that surgery. Anybody that's considering gallbladder surgery, that's not just like having a tooth pulled. That's a very serious surgery, and there are a lot of complications that I think people don't really know about, and that really led to me being really deathly ill at some point.
Wow. And for somebody who isn't familiar with Hashimoto's or what that kind of entails and what that's like to live with, can you kind of give an idea of what that is?
Sure. In fact, it seems to be really prevalent in the plant-based community. When you talk to people now, that's really common. And when I was diagnosed, I'd never heard of it before. I had a goiter, and it affected my thyroid hormone levels.
And what's a goiter, just to
It's
be
a
clear?
large growth in your thyroid gland, and it's often benign, and there's not any issues. But I had 3 precancerous nodules in my gallbladder, in my thyroid gland. So what they would ordinarily do is put you on thyroid medication to manage, because your thyroid gland can cause you to have other health problems. And it's basically Hashimoto's means that your thyroid gland is attacking your organs and it's attacking itself. It's very similar to other autoimmune diseases, but they couldn't put me on medication because they knew that those were precancerous nodules, and they wanted to actually, at some point when they grew, cut out my thyroid gland and proceed from there, which would, I think, the thing with thyroid cancer is it's if they can contain it like that, it's pretty successful to just do surgery. But it's really weird. My grandmother and my dad both had that too, which I didn't really know anything about it as a kid, but I can remember him having that surgery. But my hair was falling out. I had all sorts of weird skin problems, aches and pains, trouble sleeping, almost like hot flash type of thing. And I was 28, so that was really weird. And I also had extreme fatigue, like to the point that it was almost debilitating, almost lost my job. But my boss was really nice where I worked at the time, and he would let me leave in the afternoon and go home and sleep and then come back and finish up in the evening. Or I don't know how I would have worked. I was in such bad shape at that point. And they started doing needle biopsies on it, I think every 6 months, and then it was every 3 months. But when I started to have other health problems with the as a result of the gallbladder surgery, that sort of went on the back burner for a while because that got really serious. And not until I started the plant-based diet did everything got better, everything went away. But oddly enough, my goiter shrunk all by itself and just disappeared, along with all my symptoms and my thyroid levels, which just does not happen. That's crazy. I would have never expected that to happen. And I try not to give people false hope when I discuss that with them, because there are a lot of, like I said, a lot of people who have that same condition. But it certainly can't hurt to try this to manage, thyroid issues. I know a lot of them are much better and often reversed, like mine.
Wow. And not to kind of bring you back down the dumps, but I know that, you said you had a bunch of things that kind of happened as a result of the gallbladder surgery. And, in your message to me, you had a a list of health issues. Can you kind of go through those just to
Sure.
give a picture of where you were at that
It's
time?
overwhelming to look back on, honestly. I had, first of all, what probably happened, and my gastroenterologist said this is fairly common. When you have your gallbladder removed, often there are stones and sludge and things up in your ductwork. And now they try to go in and blow air through your ducts to try to, avoid this sort of thing. But back then, they take it out, whatever, and it took about 8 years for all of that to work itself out. And suddenly I started having pains like I was having a heart attack, very similar to what I had when I had the gallbladder removed. And um, suddenly I couldn't go to the bathroom. I would go to the bathroom like once or twice a month, which was just sheer misery. Um, I started to have these weird sweating, like your whole head would sweat to the point that it was unnaturally sweaty. I know that sounds crazy, but like you're on fire. And I've since read that people with pancreatic cancer and pancreas issues often experience those head sweats, and it was really weird. Um, I had the inability to eat. Everything I ate made me sick, to the point where you would be nauseated 3, 4 weeks at a time. I think the longest I ever went was the whole month and worked like that. And it was just really terrible. And I got fatty liver disease, and I started gaining weight with the thyroid problem too. Back up a little bit there. And most people do because it affects your metabolism. So I started gaining weight, and um, it seemed like all these other health problems. I don't know that that was necessarily why I started gaining weight, but I think depression, having to deal with all this stuff, and not being able to do anything. I was suddenly inactive, and I had a sedentary job at that point, and I'm not able to walk. I'm not able to hike or backpack or do any of the things I want to do. I'm stuck on the couch, um, very depressing, and I'm miserably sick. Um, then we ended up figuring out that I had my bile duct was completely blocked off, and I had autoimmune type symptoms that didn't really make sense, and we were running tests at this point constantly trying to figure out if I had maybe MS or if I had Sjogren's syndrome or some other sort of maybe lupus, some other problem more than the Hashimoto's, because I lost the ability to grip things, and I started losing my sight. And then I couldn't drive, and I couldn't drive. I could drive to work. It's basically across the street from where I live, but I couldn't see nearly anything. Couldn't read the signs. Could not drive at night. That was terrifying and very depressing too. And it was just a cycle. And even though what I ate made me sick, I just ate junk food. I ate donuts. I ate whatever gave me, some sort of a rush. And unfortunately, I think depression and those kind of foods and all that, that just is a vicious circle. At least it was for me. And I didn't really see my way out of that. And, you're constantly put on more medication, and then they have side effects, and then you have to take another medication to counteract that problem. Like, the bathroom issues. I'd take a medication to make me go to the bathroom. They made me violently sick. And then I would have to take another medication, which would cause you to have just the opposite. You couldn't stop going to the bathroom. So, that was just a horrible experience. And I think at some point I finally thought, I can't live the rest of my life like this. I wasn't suicidally depressed, but I was definitely despairing, and I didn't want to live like that anymore. And I knew I had to do something. And medication, doctor's visits, that just wasn't working out.
Wow. And can you give me kind of an idea of how long that period in your life was?
I think about 5 years. And, when I started, I was 28 with all of the the thyroid problems and then some of the gallbladder issues. There was a big gap there of about 8 years before everything got really bad. I had a procedure called an ERCP to go in and clean out my bile duct. And they did a sphincterotomy where they cut the muscle in between your liver and your pancreas. And because what happened was I had something called sphincter of Oddi dysfunction, where those muscles, because you've had all these blockages It's like they no longer work and they don't open and close like they're supposed to release bile from your liver, which your gallbladder regulates all that. Now you don't have that, so you're just flooded with that. It causes your insulin to do wonky stuff, and all of a sudden, I have this procedure, and I think at that point I weighed about 180 pounds, and I was extremely swollen. My abdomen was like, I'm 5'2", and for the majority of my life, I wore anywhere between like a size 5, size 7, and 8. Suddenly, I'm in a size 20 pants because my abdomen was so swollen, and I had like tears in my abdominal wall, so I couldn't turn certain ways without being in just agony, almost passing out from pain. I had, I guess, all this swelling, and where I'm just a little short-waisted person, all my organs are just sort of squashed in there. And when they did the ERCP, the doctor said every one of your internal organs has a large hematoma. You're just bruised all over. And my blood pressure shot up to 250 over 225, and they diagnosed me with diabetes. All in the hospital. It was such an awesome time. So I went in to get relief, and it was just sort of a disaster. And I got C. diff, the infection, and I got thrush in my mouth from all the medication and antibiotics that they put me on. So I was just a walking, talking mess by the time I got home. And, of course, they filled me full of opiates, which caused constipation. So here we go again. And I didn't want to take them, and my doctor didn't want me to take them. But he told me, if you're in that much pain, you have to, and we'll figure this out. But at that point, I just was at the end of my rope, and I started researching food and what do you eat and all these things, Googling everything to try to find out. There's got to be something better than this, maybe something holistic, whatever, coconut oil, whatever it will take that might help me.
Well, I guess at some point, from your experience, what you're saying, if everything else has failed you, then,
Yeah.
what else, right. I imagine every time I would pass up a hospital, I would flinch just in seeing it.
PTSD from your hospital visit.
Yeah.
No, but it was, not being able to open doors and have a grip. I would go to work and I couldn't open the doors. I couldn't open the mailbox. I couldn't. My final last straw was I bought a 40-pound box of cat litter. At that point, I had to order things off of Amazon because I couldn't carry things in the house. And I had been this formerly strong, active person, and now I can't carry the groceries in the house. And I got a 40-pound box of cat litter and sat down to try to open it, and I could not get the little flap open. And I tilted it up, and I poured 40 pounds of cat litter all over the floor, and I just sat in it and cried. And I think, at that point, I remember this was a Friday night, and I've been a person of faith for about 15 years. And at that point, I literally laid down on my living room floor. I'm not that kind of dramatic person, but I laid on the living room floor and cried out to God, you have to help me. I'll do whatever it takes. And you have to help me figure out, my way out of this. And 2 days later on Sunday, I sat down for my usual snacks and Netflix, junky snacks. And I watched a movie about veganism, which was probably a bad idea because they told me that Oreo cookies and Fritos were vegan. So I ate those for a while, but, it was an improvement. But the next movie in my queue was Forks Over Knives. And I watched it, and I knew within 10 minutes that was my answer. I was scared because I'm going to put all my hope into doing something again that might fail. But I had a really good feeling about it watching the success stories. And I thought, these people are like me. They're on all these medications. They've got all these problems. These folks have diabetes, high blood pressure, things that I didn't think were curable, things that I didn't really understand were, I knew that they were affected by your health or by your, eating habits, but I don't think I was completely convinced. But while I watched the movie, I got out my laptop and I ordered Dr. Neil Barnard's Reversing Diabetes. I ordered the starch solution and a cookbook. And I was off and running, and that was 5 years ago. And within 3 months, all the swelling in my abdomen was gone. I dropped 20 pounds, and my A1C hemoglobin went from a 12.7 to a 6.3. My vision improved. I actually went down a prescription from, I don't know how that works exactly, but I know my vision was better and I had to get new glasses. So um, it was just crazy to me that, this little answer was right out here. And, maybe if I talk to people like you and talk to my friends and share my story, other people who are like me could benefit from, I haven't lost tons of weight like some people that we both know, but with me, I think it's more about the severity of some of these diseases, especially the thyroid problems. That's really cool that it helps people like that.
Yeah, well, if you take it in, I mean, if I was to hear 8 different people and each one of them had one of your issues, I would think they were all 8 in pretty bad situations.
I
But to
know.
think that
It's
all 8 of
crazy.
those people are you, it's a
Yeah.
little wild. So obviously at some point and over a period of time, you had developed eating habits,
Hmm.
lifestyle. So you watch them. You're sitting on the floor with cat litter on Friday. You watch the movie
Yep.
on Sunday.
With my Fritos on Sunday.
What do you do on Monday? What is
I
this
cleaned
new
out the
path look?
refrigerator. Yeah, I cleaned out the refrigerator. I went to, no, I didn't have, I actually got the starch solution on my Kindle because I couldn't just sit with that information. I'm that kind of person. I analyze everything and Google everything, and I had to have that information in my hands. So I started trying to do the starch solution Monday, and um, I failed miserably sometimes. I didn't do a really great job. I lost about 30 pounds in the first couple of years, and then I had a plateau that I credit Chef AJ with the big changes, which is no nuts, no seeds, lay off the avocado, and all of that. But Jason, it was killing me that I couldn't exercise. And I would drive my car to the local park and walk for maybe 10 minutes. Oh, and I hurt my back at this point too. And I think it was from carrying around all that, excess weight.
Or the
But
cat food?
yeah, but I went to the park and I walked about for 10 minutes and I'd come home and cry the whole way home because I couldn't do it. I even bought a pair of hiking boots to torture myself and would sit and stare at them. But um, about 5 months into it, I did a 12-mile kayak race and hiked 14 miles the next day. And I that's unbelievable to me, that I would feel that good and that my body would respond like that with healthy food, and I felt lighter, and it's just crazy to me. And I started reading anything I could get my hands on. Um, and I'd always loved hiking and backpacking, so I started pushing myself to try to do that a little bit more. And my inability to do what I wanted to do pushed me to try to get the remainder of the weight off and really, knuckle down and get the junky stuff that we still struggle with, the vegan cheeses and, all of that sort of stuff, and Gardein or whatever. I had to get that out of there in order to do what I needed to do. So
Yeah, and how long did it take you to start seeing some serious or start feeling seriously better? Was it instant? Was it within a week,
just
2 weeks, month?
about
Okay.
3 months. I think 3 months, everything had changed dramatically. And um, when we had to have a health screening every year for our health insurance, biometric screening, and that affects our premiums. And it's a point system, and it's based on your BMI, your blood pressure. Every year, I was at the bottom of the barrel with people who smoked because my health was terrible and my BMI was atrocious. This is the first, I think, 2 years now in a row I've had all points possible, and they actually called me, my health coach, and wants me to be one of their success stories. And I said, I'll be your success story, but I have to be able to mention that this is really a plant based success story. And she said, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So to have my health insurance company want to use me, that's so amazing. I can't even believe it. I can't wrap my brain around the fact that 5 years ago I was at death's door, and I had 4 years of my liver enzymes were really high. That's permanent damage sometimes. That's a really scary thing to face. And losing my vision was really terrifying. And I have neither of those problems now. My liver enzymes are perfect, which is just nuts.
Wow. Yeah, I know you mentioned to me that at one point you actually even had problems just plain walking.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
to think that, from there to now you're hiking 14 miles, it's a
It's crazy.
pretty big difference.
It's a huge difference. Yeah. I'm backpacking too. I'm hoping to do the High Sierra Trail in September by myself. There'll be people there, but I want to do it by myself. I want to sign the register on top of Mount Whitney all by myself. The highest point in the lower 48. That's the highest trail in the country, and you know that would be really cool. It's my 50th year, and I lost the weight, and I don't know. That would just feel really cool. Whether I get to do it or not, I'm going to try really hard.
That's fantastic. So where are you at now? I mean, I know you said you had diabetes, you had thyroid issues, you had, all these slew of things. Where do you sit today with all of your medical issues with
I
medication?
really don't have any. I was on about 9 medications. Now I'm on. I still keep my asthma inhaler because I have seasonal allergies, but I really don't have seasonal allergies like I did before. Um, that's it. And I was on metformin. I was on losartan for my blood pressure. I was on um, digestive enzymes. I was not on any thyroid medication, but I was on 4 or 5 different pills to try to help me go to the bathroom or stop going to the bathroom. Um, I took, I can't remember. I know there were about 9 different medications. I don't want to remember, honestly. But it was a really big hit to your pocketbook, too, because there were some I couldn't afford. There was a digestive enzyme they wanted me to buy that I could never afford. And, it's crazy. I go see these doctors now just for a checkup, and they can't believe it. In fact, colon cancer runs in my family. My mother had it. My grandmother had it. My mother had cancer 5 times, starting when I was in high school, and watching her, struggle through all of that. So when that started going on with me in my 20s, I felt like that was my future. That's the only future I had, was to get sick just like her, because all these things are hereditary, they tell us, which we know is not completely true. And I'm sorry, I lost my point there. The I think the big thing with that was um, her dealing with the colon cancer. That terrified me, and I started having colonoscopies at 24. Had one every year. Well, now I only have to have them every 3 years, because the last one I had, he said my colon was perfect, textbook perfect. That's exactly what he said. And 4 years before that, I had colon polyps. And to go from 24 years old to 50, having those every year, that's crazy. Now I only have to have them every 3. So obviously, colon cancer is preventable. And we
Wow.
do it anyway, but pretty
Yes,
cool.
that's all awesome. So I know that you mentioned, I know obviously, you were in a much different place in life before, but I also think, from my own experience and from conversations with other people, that there is a mental element that maybe for some people plays a bigger part or a smaller part. I know you said you struggled with depression before.
Yeah.
How has everything, that you've overcome and where you've come to now, you know, what has that done for anything, any even mention of depression in your life now?
Well, it's crazy, but so much of this is mental, and I think the hardest thing for me, it's not just to stay motivated to exercise and things like that. That's all obviously, mental. But the big thing with me was I had to change how I looked at food and how food affects my relationships and socializing. And when I talk to people um, who are just starting to transition into this way of life, that's their biggest struggle. How do I feed my family without making everybody mad at me? How do I go to social functions? How do I go eat in a restaurant? How do you have a birthday without birthday cake? All that stuff. How do you go to the movies without a bucket with the WD-40, on the top? That's that's not just struggling with um, what you eat. That's depressing. That can be scary. That's a big change. That was really hard for me. But I think once I mastered that, and once I started to realize that I had been a food addict and I couldn't have the stuff in my house, um, I had coping skills all of a sudden with this way of life. And it changes your taste buds. It changes the way you feel about food. But those are things I had to really kind of grapple with. And I think the process of grappling with that, it helped me cope and focus with other things in my life too. I'm much more disciplined than I ever was before, I think. Um, but I think it does affect like your dopamine and serotonin and all those things, just like exercise does. You're eating this clean diet. You have to wonder, what did all of the preservatives and things, what did that do to my brain before? But I don't feel depressed. I feel like I'm excited to get out of bed every morning. I bet you hear that a lot.
I
you know?
do. I do.
Yeah.
And I experience it as well. I'm thankful for it.
Yeah.
So you mentioned in there, you had to change the way that you think about food, and that's something that you tell other people. So how is the way that you think about food now different than before? Maybe you can say what you thought about before and what you think about it now, or how
Well,
you
it
do.
was entertainment is one thing. I ate when I was bored, not just a food addict, but I ate for entertainment purposes. And when I was bored, when I was stressed, that sort of thing. I think the biggest change is when I go out to eat with friends and family members now, I go out to spend time with them. And I have to really make a conscious, I don't now, but in the beginning, I had to make a conscious effort to think about, why am I here? I'm not just here to eat a hamburger. And I think that our visits now are a lot more enjoyable for everybody. Once they got over feeling sorry for me and feeling awkward, my family and my friends have been great about this. I don't have anybody doing this with me, but they've been really understanding and extremely helpful. And I've never gotten any kind of flack. I've never gotten any kind of sarcasm or meanness. They worried about, well, where do you get your protein and all that. But, for the most part, they've been great. But um, I don't know. I think that it was sometimes more awkward for them than me. But I've put a lot of effort into really thinking about my relationships with other people, and how food plays into that, and that it can make things kind of awkward and difficult. And um, I don't know, that's been a sort of a work in progress. But, those are things we face when you change the way you eat.
Yeah. And what about this, besides everything, what about this journey has surprised you looking back, having the rear view mirror to look back in now? What did you just not expect?
I didn't expect it to be this easy, or that I could eat this much food. I can eat a lot of food, and this is the perfect, lifestyle for that. I don't think you don't have to count calories. There's no point system, But the most surprising thing is it was so easy that all I can think about is, why didn't I do this sooner? I wish I'd have known about this sooner. I would have never ended up where I was, and how fast it works to heal your body. We're talking about people, you and I both have read stories about people that have lost huge amounts of weight in just tiny periods of time. You're talking about people who lose 200 pounds in a year, people who lose 15 pounds the first week that they do this. Now, that's not everybody's experience, but I don't know of anything else where you can healthfully lose weight like that. You do that on The Biggest Loser, and these people have their hair falls out, and we don't hear the horror stories, but that's amazing. And the community that's involved too. That's been a huge surprise, which is great, amazing.
Absolutely. You said that, at 50 you're in the best shape of your life, and you kind of hinted at this earlier, but looking back, you're 28, you're 30, you're 32, 35, and you're having all these health issues. Where did you think you were going to be at 50?
Oh, I didn't know. I didn't try to. I tried not to think about it. I didn't want to be where I was, but it didn't look good. The future looked grim to me. I envisioned myself just slowly falling apart. And our medical system now, it keeps people alive through some pretty cruddy stuff. You know, um, Death didn't really scare me. It was the inability to do things and to be disabled. That seemed to be in my future. If I had MS or one of these awful autoimmune diseases, what was my future going to be? Could I work? Could I exercise? Could I do anything? Could I have friends? And this affected, being sick affects your relationships with other people too. People get tired of you not being able to do stuff. They get tired of you. You're Debbie Downer. What can you do? and they worry about you, and it's just really stressful and difficult. And that's what I thought the future would be. So now it's just the future's it's amazing. The possibilities are endless. I have hope again, and I don't think I really had that at that point.
So, what would you tell somebody who's at the beginning of this journey, who's trying to figure things out, who's trying to navigate the waters, early on, or they're ready to jump off into the deep end?
Yeah.
What would you tell that person at the beginning to give them some encouragement or some direction?
Well, I'm nothing special, and most of us are nothing special. We're just average, ordinary people that have done this. Um, it's not too hard to figure out how to do it. Um, it's not that expensive, but I know it's scary, and it's a huge change. It's going to change your life completely, and you're going to have to be able to prepare for times when you can't find certain things to eat. And when you have difficulties like that, don't beat yourself up. You can't, if you mess up, just get right back up. And you're going to mess up. Everybody does. Everybody, has that time where they falter or whatever. The big thing that I think I'd like to tell people when I see people in Facebook groups and social media talking about this sort of thing, there's two things that really help me. And I'm not one of those people that needs someone to come alongside me and baby me and make things easy. I need a drill sergeant screaming in my face. That's how I'm motivated. So even though you need to take care of yourself and not beat yourself up and just get back up and, get the oil out of your diet, try not to eat the Oreos, whatever it takes, don't make excuses. Excuses were my downfall there in the beginning, you can do this, but don't make excuses and don't completely baby yourself. And reach out. There's such a huge plant-based community. There's books, there's websites, there's recipes. I don't know what to make, and I hear that a lot. I'm bored. Really? Just look at Dr. McDougall's website. There are like 40 bazillion recipes on just his website alone. I mean, then there's, we know all the places to stop and look at the recipes, but you should never be bored. And another thing, I think that's one of the perks of this is once you get beyond all of the recipes and the foods and the things that you grew up with and that you like, and you start adapting this lifestyle and you start finding favorites, like there's certain people that love sweet potatoes or whatever. This is really a great creative outlet, at least I've found, to learn how to cook. And it's new foods and it's kind of exciting. And, they're really interesting things to be discovered in food and great recipes and things you've never tried before. I think that's really cool. So,
yeah, I tell people all the time that for my wife and I, that it was kind of a part of our relationship that we just didn't have before was being in the kitchen together.
Yeah,
I had zero interest in really anything. I always say anything other than beige, which was usually bread, cheese,
yeah,
and some kind of a
some
meat
kind of
like
mayonnaise.
substance. Yeah.
Yes.
And now she actually will allow me in the kitchen. So
So, I mean, how cool is that? Yeah.
yeah. Well, and also for me personally, like I can go to somebody's house, or I can go to a restaurant. I can go and enjoy something and enjoy a conversation, or enjoy just the learning experience that previously, I was kind of either closed off to or just didn't
Yeah,
have opportunities to experience.
exactly. And, I took my brothers with me we went to Virginia Beach not long ago, and we'd never done anything together. They were 16 and 21 when I was born. And we've done, things, go out to eat or do things or whatever. I grew up with their children basically. But this was the first time we ever, just the three of us, went on like a little mini vacation. And I had them wheeling them around Whole Foods and Trader Joe's, and, we're back at the house, and they're not going to do this, but they were definitely experimenting with things they'd never eaten before, and eating more salads, and it was just a really neat experience. But this does kind of rub off on people. My boss and his fiance are now plant-based, and they have been for like a year, and they are constantly in the kitchen cooking, and they take pictures of it, and they're so cute, and they put pictures on Instagram, and it's really funny. But that's amazing. And I have two other friends that are doing it now too, and a lady at my job has expressed some interest, so I'm going to buy her the starch solution. But yeah, who knew food was so fun and healthy too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and then, I know you kind of alluded to it earlier, but if you could go back in time and have a conversation with yourself at some point in the past when you were struggling or, when life was difficult, when you had a mountain to climb as far as medically speaking, what advice or what kind words or what drill sergeant words would you give to that person?
Well, I think back then didn't need a drill sergeant so much. To just hang in there and keep asking questions, and um, always question your doctors. And if they don't handle that well, get a new doctor. You know, my doctors, neither one are plant-based doctors, but they've completely embraced that now, and they ask me questions, and they're really interested in this. I would tell anybody. I think the big thing with myself early on, be proactive in your health. If I would have done that early on, I think maybe things wouldn't have gone so bad. But who knows? I don't know what would have happened. But um, yeah, I think that would have that would have been the boost that I needed. Maybe the pat on the back that you can get through this and you can do it. And I know now from this diet, the one thing I would like to tell other people, you can do anything. You set your mind to, pretty much. I mean, within limits, sure, but we're doing things we never thought we'd do. I never thought I'd hike and backpack again. I never thought I'd do any of this stuff again. So, Tim Kaufman's going to write a book. I don't think he thought he'd ever do that a few years ago, let alone, do ultra marathons or whatever you guys are trying to do now. I can't even wrap my brain around that. No way.
Well, but, we've all come a very far away from where we once thought
we sure have.
Our potential was.
Absolutely.
Well, lastly, where can people connect with you and find out more about what you have going on?
Ooh, I'm thinking about starting a blog. I have had a blog that I used to write devotionals, and I've had some articles and things I wrote for my church. I had that blog since 2006, and I haven't really been involved in it because I've been doing this plant-based thing, and I've become obsessed with the outdoors. But I've been thinking about starting a blog about backpacking here in West Virginia, and might feature some of my recipes on there too. But I'm on Facebook. I'm not a Twitterer or whatever, a tweeter. I'm not. No, I can't handle it. I'm one of those people that gets sucked in and, can't disengage. No, no. But yeah, you can find me on Facebook. That's about it. And maybe on a blog sometime soon. I don't know.
Okay. Well, fantastic. Well, thanks so much for the time, for the inspiration. Congratulations on everything. I'll look forward to hearing about the trail journal from Mount Whitney. That's right.
That was the Donald Trump moment right there. I think he does that. Yeah, Mount Whitney. I can't wait. I'm going to do this.
Awesome.
I'm going to try. We'll see what happens.
I'll look forward to hearing all about it. And,
yeah, I'll take lots of pictures.
All right. Well, have a great afternoon. Have a good night. And thanks again.
Thanks, you too. Thanks so much.